Science fiction is a genre that invites weird and wonderful characters from all corners. Far from the odd eccentric, it's not unusual to find a film packed to the rafters with oddities and oddballs, each straining to get their share of screen time. Sometimes, while the hero takes all the glory, there is an equally interesting and often even greater character waiting in the wings. These are the smaller and oft overlooked roles that deserve to be expanded with their own feature. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for Whatculture, and let's take a look at these sci-fi movie characters who deserve their own spin-off. Starting with Dibs, High Life. Queen of the contemporary French indie scene, Claire Denis has been making challenging, transgressive films built around captivating and profoundly flawed characters for nearly 4 decades. And while her career trajectory has never exactly been predictable, in 2018 she did the unthinkable by making an English-language science fiction space movie starring Robert Pattinson and Mia Goth. In typical Denis fashion, however, everything isn't quite as it seems. Far from being the next Star Wars, Alien, or even Interstellar, High Life is a subversive and surreal journey into the outer reaches, focusing on a group of criminals serving death sentences who are sent on a mission to a black hole while being subjected to strange, sexual, scientific experiments by the onboard doctor, Dibs. Pattinson and Goth are compelling characters, but Juliette Binoche's Dibs is a whole other level, being the true standout of High Life. She remains tantalizingly mysterious for the duration, from her introduction through to her suicide. And while Denis would never make such a thing, a prequel film about how Dibs came to be this disturbed, hypersexual scientist would be delicious. Prince Voltan, Flash Gordon. Mike Hodges' 80s space opera Flash Gordon is a perfect example of the kind of sci-fi new Hollywood movies like Star Wars and Alien were supposed to have killed off. And yet its comic book action, cheesy script, and larger-than-life characters managed to make it a pop culture mainstay. The film sends all-American football quarterback Flash Gordon into outer space, where he is forced to unite the warring factions of planet Mongo to prevent tyrant Ming the Merciless from wielding ever greater power and destroying Earth. While Flash and Ming alone were enough to spawn a cult following, and all the merch that comes with it, the character anyone and everyone quotes to this day is Brian Blessed's Prince Voltan. Voltan is the ruler of the winged bird men from Sky City, and while he begins as a stooge for Ming, he ends the picture as a Gordon ally. And there's not a moment of the far too limited time he's on screen that isn't solid gold. Voltan's a big character, with a whole history behind him, and few of the madcap sorts from this weird and wacky film are more deserving of deeper exploration than he. Voltan's alive! Casey Boyd, Bugonia. Yorgos Lanthimos' latest twisted nightmare arrived last year in the form of black comedy sci-fi thriller Bugonia. The film has US conspiracy theorist Teddy Gatz and his autistic cousin Don abduct Michelle Fuller, the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, in the belief that she is an Andromedan who has infiltrated Earth and is part of a concerted effort to force humanity into subservience. It's a wild ride of a movie that deftly picks apart contemporary America's obsession with conspiracy, while providing just enough push and pull to keep us questioning everything we know. But in the background, another story chugs along, that of Deputy Sheriff Casey Boyd. Comedian and podcaster Stavros Halkias dropped in to give an idiosyncratic turn as the local lawman, and in the process created a character and side story begging to be investigated. Casey repeatedly tries to apologize to Teddy for some unnamed event that transpired between them back when he was Teddy's babysitter. And every time Teddy shrugs it off, makes us more certain that it's something that might explain his current behavior. Alas, Casey departs before we really get to the meat of it, and the film's conclusion leaves little room for further exploration. But Casey's bumbling, overweight officer is so distinctive, and the hints of his backstory so darkly compelling, that they beg for a spin-off prequel. Guy Fleegman, Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest is now a classic of the sci-fi comedy genre, arriving at a time when meta-film storytelling was still in its first major wave of popularity, and paying loving homage to Star Trek with a double-hander of a narrative that sees the cast of the fictional Galaxy Quest show find themselves part of a real intergalactic conflict. The movie stars heavyweights like Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, and Tim Allen, with a breakout role for Sam Rockwell. Now, Sam Rockwell has rarely, if ever, played a supporting role that didn't steal the show. But we had to pick only one, and Guy Fleegman is our man. Rockwell plays a bit part actor who had a brief dalliance with the Galaxy Quest show as crewman number 6, who was unsurprisingly killed off in his only episode. But it's not what Guy originally did in the fictional show that makes him worthy of a spin-off, but the person he has become since, living off his limited past glory and riding a wave of conventions before being drawn into the new real intergalactic conflict. Sam Rockwell's performance is what drives the interest in this part, as he imbues the character with a brash insecurity, loud mouth, and immaculate comedic timing. He owns every scene, even when opposite an array of popular and well-known actors, with his character proving hilarious, heroic, and complex enough to warrant and sustain a solo movie. Frank, Men in Black. The Men in Black comics got their first big screen adaptation in the 90s, bringing Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones together as agents J and K, tasked with protecting humanity from the scum of the universe as members of the covert, extra-governmental Men in Black. Across 3 further films, the franchise broadened across time and space, bringing us into contact with an array of aliens, monsters, and unexplainables, including the iconic, fast-talking, cigar-smoking, New York accented pug, Frank. Making his debut in the first movie, Frank became a staple tertiary character of the franchise, dropping in every now and then to help the agents out of a tight spot, and even becoming a bona fide agent himself in the first sequel. Frank was sorely missed in Men in Black 3, something the producers clearly took on board because they brought the sass-mouth critter back for spin-off/reboot Men in Black International. Unfortunately though, he was not the star of the show. What we really want is a Frank movie that explores what he did before he became an agent, ideally including his time with the circus in the 1960s as the incredible speaking pug, and definitely settling the age-old question, is he an Earthborn dog that can talk, or an alien that just happens to look like a pug? Neil, Tenet. Christopher Nolan's Tenet was the first new film most of us saw after the initial UK COVID lockdowns, and it delivered the cinema of scale that we had been sorely missing for months. With OTT set pieces, nigh impossible camera work, and dialogue that could barely be heard over the explosions, and Ludwig Göransson's synth crescendos. We join CIA operative the protagonist as he is inducted by Neil into covert organization Tenet, which uses objects with inverted entropy to move backwards through time. But they're not the only people who know about the objects, as Russian oligarch Andrei Sator is communicating with his future self and using the information he receives to build the algorithm, a device designed to invert the entropy of the world and destroy its past. You with me? Nolan's films are always about complex characters wrestling with either complex ideas, complex plots, or both. But not all his characters get their depths explored in the process. While present for much of the movie, Neil remains an enigma. Badass, noble, and stoically tight-lipped, he never reveals anything he knows about the protagonist, who recruited him, trained him, and has been doing missions with him for years, but which the protagonist can't remember because, well, for him, it hasn't happened yet. And it is these missions that would make the perfect fodder for another film, putting Neil front and center and allowing him more space to shine. Nasha, Mickey 17. Bong Joon-ho added another entry to his English language sci-fi canon last year with this novel adaptation, which follows Mickey Barnes as he joins the interplanetary Niflheim colonization expedition, signing away his rights to become an expendable grunt who is cloned and reprinted every time he dies. Robert Pattinson is undeniably the center of this film. In fact, many Robert Pattinsons are. But that doesn't mean there isn't plenty of room for other characters to make their mark. Bong's movies are always replete with unique personalities, all with their own tics, wants, and needs. And Mickey 17 gives us many. For example, take Stephen Yeun's two-faced turncoat pilot Timo, or Mark Ruffalo's tyrant mission leader Kenneth Marshall, whose parallels to Trump may be a bit on the nose at times, but is nonetheless an absolute hoot. But the person we want to see more of is security agent Nasha, Mickey's girlfriend. Their relationship is illicit in the eyes of the expedition, and unusual in the gender dynamics, as Nasha operates as Mickey's protector and defender, the muscle of the pair, and the person who makes it their job to sort things out, with feckless, hapless Mickey often running to her for help. And we want more! A prequel, a sequel, a spin-off of any kind that would give Naomi Aki more screen time as the gun-slinging, fist-fighting badass she was seemingly born to play. Dr. Fate, Black Adam. Jalma Khaled-Serra of House of Wax and Orphan fame was handed the reins to one of DC's most compelling villains 4 years ago. And he brought us a flawed yet valiant interpretation of Black Adam, with Dwayne Johnson in the leading role. The film follows ancient Shazam-powered superhuman Teth Adam as he is released from his magic jail by archaeologists and attempts to liberate the fictional nation of Karndak from a notorious crime syndicate. Johnson is fine in the part, but it is the supporting characters from the Justice Society that bring the movie to life. Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate all but steals the show, with the double-hander of Wise Old Man on one hand and Sorcerer Enigma when he dons the Helmet of Fate. But in a perplexing move, given how good Brosnan's interpretation of the character is and that he had only just been introduced, Fate is sacrificed in the film's final act. Fortunately, they aged the character up for this one, and Brosnan can still play a man at least 10 years his junior. Unfortunately though, Black Adam arrived right at the end of the DCEU before Warner Brothers handed the keys to James Gunn, and he binned the existing canon. This Fate deserves so much more screen time and a proper exploration of his character and abilities. But Gunn has confirmed it ain't happening. O'Brien, 1984. George Orwell's seminal science fiction novel 1984 is widely regarded as both a classic of 20th century literature and an evergreen cautionary tale that warns against authoritarianism and government overreach. But what they don't tell you is that it's also rather dull, with a story that's not made for the screen. That, however, hasn't stopped several directors from trying. Michael Radford's 1984 adaptation follows the book as closely as possible, while doing its best to bring the material to life through its set design and performances. John Hurt turns in a gut-churning performance as Winston Smith, the state employee who lives a miserable existence in London, closely observed by the Thought Police. Any hint of deviance from the Superstate's party line and the utterances of enigmatic figurehead Big Brother earn you a ticket to the Ministry of Love for rehabilitation. And this is where Winston is tortured and reconditioned by O'Brien, played by stage and screen icon Richard Burton, the cool, logical inner party member Winston wrongly places his trust in. The movie shows us everything Winston is, dismantling him and his memories until we are left with a shell of a man whose life is small and fully explained. But on the other side of the coin is O'Brien, who takes no joy in his work but goes about it methodically, and whose comments suggest a storied past of rebellion against the party. There are few among us who wouldn't rather see that film instead. Poe Dameron, Star Wars sequels. The decision for Disney to make a new trilogy of Star Wars films was met with raised eyebrows and trepidation, especially as it would continue the Skywalker saga but deviate from George Lucas's original ideas for story and the characters that had populated expanded media for decades. And suffice to say, the trilogy and characters we got are a mixed bag. The sequel trilogy is part original trilogy, part hot mess, continuing the Skywalker lineage and story in Ben Solo's struggles with the dark side, while Palpatine's granddaughter Rey finds her place in the light. One of the few elements that is consistently bankable is Oscar Isaac's resistance fighter pilot Poe Dameron, who is always leading the charge to take down the Sith-adjacent Neo-Empire First Order. Like young Luke Skywalker and Han Solo rolled into one, Poe is a hot-headed flyboy with a heart of gold and the morals to back it up. He is the charismatic spirit of rebellion, and as we are drip-fed details about his past throughout the movies, how he went from being a shady spice smuggler running with an underworld crew to becoming General Leia Organa's most trusted operative, it only leaves us wanting more. Sequel, spin-off, TV show, heist movie, honestly, we would be happy to see Poe back on screen in any form. Ghost, The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions. The Wachowskis' original Matrix movie set a high bar for philosophical action cinema, taking the brain in a vat thought experiment and extending it out into a fully realized world. Office worker Thomas Anderson meets legendary hackers Morpheus and Trinity and discovers his reality isn't quite what it seems. Going deeper down the rabbit hole, Thomas is yanked out of the virtual reality he has been enslaved in and into the desolate future where machines rule and humanity has created an underground resistance. The Matrix sequels, Reloaded and Revolutions, didn't manage to live up to the promise of their predecessor, but they did succeed in building out this universe and exploring its possibilities with an array of compelling characters. Unfortunately, some of the best characters are barely on screen at all though. Enter gun specialist Ghost. Something of a deep cut for Matrix movie fans, Ghost appears in both the sequels, but only just. He's Niobe's right-hand man and operates with the cool decisiveness of both Buddhist and gunslinger. He got the opportunity to make his mark in the video game Enter the Matrix, for which a whole pile of extra scenes were shot, but alas, we have yet to enjoy him long-form in the films. Duncan, Idaho, Dune. Dune was supposedly the unadaptable book series. That was until Denis Villeneuve came along with $165 million and a cast of contemporary greats, including Oscar Isaac, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem, Timothée Chalamet, and Rebecca Ferguson. Adapting swathes of author Frank Herbert's material into a tight 2.5 hours, Villeneuve gave us Dune, the space epic about House Atreides' fall from power. The weight of the film is on Chalamet's back as Paul, son of Duke Leto, who must wrangle his mystical lineage and doomed inheritance on the desert planet Arrakis following the assassination of his father. But it is Chalamet's supporting cast that keeps him afloat, including a surprising standout performance from Jason Momoa as Swordmaster Duncan, Idaho, who is a die-hard loyalist to House Atreides, trains Paul in combat, and creates the connection with Arrakis' native Fremen necessary to turn things back in Paul's favor. Alas, Duncan is mercilessly killed off in the movie's final act. Facing down the corrupt Emperor's soldiers single-handedly, Duncan sacrifices himself, holding them off long enough for Paul and his mother Jessica to escape. This is part of what makes his character so good, and while if true to the books, we can expect Duncan to return in some form in the third Dune film, we would like very much to enjoy the character in a standalone entry as well. Quicksilver, X-Men Prequels. After Brett Ratner tanked the main X-Men franchise, and Gavin Hood did his best to bury the rest of the IP with the disastrous X-Men Origins Wolverine, it seemed like there weren't many places the franchise could go. And so, it went back. Matthew Vaughn gave us X-Men First Class in 2010, a new film for a new decade that looks at the origins of Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, giving a fresh appearance and start to many of the X-Men we were already familiar with, and a few we weren't. Director of the first two X films, Bryan Singer, signed on for the sequel Days of Future Past, and with it came one of the best Marvel characters translated from comic to screen, Quicksilver. Forget Aaron Taylor-Johnson's Eastern Bloc-accented Adidas-wearing power twin. Evan Peters' quirky interpretation of the character is where it's at. Primarily acting alone in his best scenes. You know, the ones super slow-mo, catchy song, plenty of gags. Imbuing them with a physical humor that has made his character so memorable. Peters brought the speedster to life and was the breakout success for Days and its sequel Apocalypse, before Quicksilver was given a dull, half-assed part in Dark Phoenix, the dull, half-assed film that brought the prequels and new timeline established in Days to a grinding halt. Sod the Flash, where's our Quicksilver movie? Dwayne Hicks, Aliens. James Cameron picked up where Ridley Scott left off with Aliens, his action horror extravaganza which took the premise of Scott's film and scaled it up, introducing weapons, grunts, and an army of xenomorphs. Ellen Ripley makes it home safe to Earth, but the Weyland-Yutani Corporation isn't done with her yet, and they send her with a squad of colonial marines back to the original site of the alien eggs, which has since been terraformed and may now be in grave danger. And the Marines are kind of the star of the show, trading quips, wielding serious firepower, and just being generally badass, especially Corporal Dwayne Hicks. Hicks could have been a mainstay for the franchise, continuing the adventure with Ripley and maybe finding some peace for her and young colonist Newt down the line. But David Fincher and Fox went and killed him in the opening credits for Alien 3, leaving the franchise to spin solely on Ripley's axis, with diminishing returns, until Ridley Scott's soft reboot Prometheus. Unfortunately, in the process of doing this, and using Michael Bihn's likeness without his permission, the studio pissed Bihn off, putting the nails in the coffin of any possible Hicks prequel/spin-off. But we can imagine how satisfying it could have been to see a Colonial Marines movie with Hicks, Hudson, and the rest of the gang going to town on some non-xenomorph threat. And finally, Harry Tuttle, Brazil. To see what 1984 could have been with a big plot and a full cast of characters, Terry Gilliam's Brazil is the place to go. Released just a year after 1984, the film takes the hyper-surveillance corporate state, mixes in Kafkan bureaucracy, and wraps it around the grubby, claustrophobic visual style that Gilliam and DP Roger Pratt perfected straight out of the gate. Sam Lowry is a white-collar state employee who finds his regular-as-clockwork life turned upside down when he uncovers the authorities mistakenly arrested, tortured, and killed a cobbler while hunting a suspected terrorist. And that terrorist is rogue engineer Archibald Tuttle, played by none other than Robert De Niro. Now, De Niro is known for gangster parts like Goodfellas and The Godfather, and intense character studies like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, but every once in a while he breaks type, and nowhere more so than in Brazil. Tuttle is an ex-state employee who started illegally freelancing for the adventure, and is basically a live-action Mario, with De Niro all but unrecognizable in the role. He repairs Sam's aircon and vanishes, only resurfacing once or twice more throughout Brazil. But this bit part is one of the best, most intriguing and charismatic performances in a film of great character work, and we are left wanting much, much more. Tuttle is still out there following the events of Brazil, and both Gilliam and De Niro are still working. So maybe, just maybe,